Welcome back. After an amazing 327, we're finally back to our regular schedule of fight nights. Now, this one is in Canada, so it's already better off than the usual Apex fight night. So there's that. But it is, like I said, it is Canada. So we're going to be getting our usual Malott, Jourdain, Jasmine. Nallo's a new guy. That guy's a new unlocked character for these fight nights in Canada. But this one's, it's not that good. It's actually it's actually pretty weak, but it's still something, I guess, when it comes to it being in Canada. But yeah, so we're gonna be getting Gilberto Quemas versus Mike Malott for the main event. So it's yeah, it is pretty weak. It is a pretty weak card, I'm gonna be honest. But yeah, let's make this one quick. I'm gonna be honest, because this one I don't think people are even gonna care to watch. Great, this one doesn't even open up the UFC. They really got to step up their game when it comes to these websites. But anyways, first fight, we got bantamweight. We got Jamie Siraj. At first, I thought this guy was Indian for a second, because you look at his last name, and if you know anything about Canada, there's a bunch of Indians in Canada. Okay, but no, this guy's actually like a white guy, I think, when I seen his film study, and he was facing off with Yannis. I'm gonna be generally honest. I'm just gonna make this one quick. I'm gonna go with Siraj. From what I've seen, he's actually pretty decent in the regional scene. I would say he's better than Yannis. Yannis is So I'm just gonna go with Siraj, a decision. I don't see him doing anything else spectacular in his debut fight, but I do see him winning by decision. For the first fight of the card, we're gonna go with Siraj, win a decision. Next up, this one's actually a pretty underrated banger. Bantamweight bout, we got John Castaneda versus Mark Vologdin. If you do not remember this Mark Vologdin guy, he's coming from the Contender Series. And if you remember at the UFC website or YouTube channel, they uploaded a video from the Contender Series called the greatest fight of all time, which, I mean, it's not really true. It is a really good fight, but it really isn't true. It has like 2 million views. Well, this guy is one of the fighters that fought on that fight basically. And he lost. It was a really good fight. He had a really good first round. But aside from that, yeah, he still got signed, of course. Usually fighters that go to really close decisions that are like bangers in the Contender Series still get signed. The other guy, the winner, I think he's fighting like after this fight night. I think he's fighting the next one. But he's now faced though with John Castaneda. And I'm going to be generally honest, John Castaneda, this dude's actually a little bit underrated. Even though he's not like elite, his stand-up is pretty good. His grappling extremely underrated. It's really good, his grappling. Mark Vologdin, I wouldn't be surprised if many people are going to be picking Mark simply because the fact that he was part of that really great fight in the Contender Series. And his boxing is pretty good. It's just in that fight, he was getting taken down quite a bit. And I do see John Castaneda kind of picking apart Vologdin at range in this fight. He is a pretty small. He has 5'3" Mark. He kind of like leaps into range basically to like cover that distance quickly. But John Castaneda is actually kind of crafty. He's pretty tricky to deal with on the feet and on the ground. He's not elite like I said, but the more I think about this one, I kind of wanted to pick Mark just simply because of the narrative behind the whole Contender Series fight, and then we could probably make a run the UFC. But I do lean towards John. Just watching this fight and seeing the issues that he can bring to this fight and actually beat Mark for this guy making his debut. I'm gonna go with John Castaneda just because simply I just see it simply as he's probably gonna win this fight if you look at it. So I'm just gonna go with John Castaneda decision. I don't see him finishing Mark. Mark does seem to have a pretty good chin, and yeah, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe Mark just gets John Castaneda out there in the first round. But I do see John Castaneda's grappling being a pretty decent factor in this fight. So I'm gonna go with John Castaneda decision. Next up, we got let's see right here. I think this was, I should remember the division, but, and also what is going on. I'm pretty sure this is going to be fixed right after I upload this video, but we got JJ Aldrich versus Jamie Lynn Horth. JJ Aldrich is this one if you didn't recognize, but anyways, Jamie Lynn Horth is this one. I'm going to go with Jamie Lynn Horth. She's on the stand-up. Her kickboxing is pretty good. She has developed some decent takedown defense in her last couple of fights. She was, her main issue was her lack of grappling. She was getting out grappled in some of her fights. But her last fight, she defended the takedowns, and they're pretty good on the feet. Like I said, she's a pretty good kickboxer. JJ Aldrich really doesn't bring anything to the table. I'm gonna be genuinely honest. She doesn't. She's not a threat on the ground or on the feet. She's just, I would say she's like decently well-rounded. So I don't see her ragdolling Jamie Lynn Horth at all in this fight. And I do see Jamie Lynn Horth beating the crap out of JJ Aldrich on the feet. So I'm going with Jamie Lynn Horth decision. Maybe KO, maybe the first KO of the card. But I'm going to go with decision. I do see her winning on the scorecards. Maybe being a little bit close. But I am going to lean towards Jamie Lynn Horth. Just being, she's kind of tall for the division. For her division, kind of lanky, what's it called? Lengthy, wiry. So yeah, so I'm going to go with her decision. Jamie Lynn Horth. Yeah. Next up at flyweight, we got Raposo versus Alan Nascimento. This one's a decent fight. I would say it's kind of tricky. Raposo, he's dealing up with a pretty decent grappler, Alan Nascimento. Now, his last fight against Maxim was a decent fight. He won that fight. Maxim, even though Maxim is kind of like he's like 0-3 right now, or 0-4 in the UFC. He's been done dirty by the UFC, just saying. He has been facing quite like hard comp. He had a really good fight against what's that dude's name? Saeed Nurmagomedov. I can't even say his name. Maxim is not horrible, and I would even say he is actually slightly better than Alan Nascimento. Now, I want to say like in terms of like the overall grappling, but I would say in terms of the takedowns, Maxim has some pretty decent takedowns, some really sneaky takedowns. Nascimento is kind of just like your basic grappler in terms of just shoot at your legs and try to get a takedown from there. But Maxim, I would say he's better than that. So I could see Raposo defending Nascimento's takedowns and then keep it on the feet. And Raposo on the feet is pretty tricky. His switch stance striking is pretty hard to deal with, especially at this level at flyweight. Kind of like a Manel Cape, type of striking. I do see him probably defending the takedowns. If Alan Nascimento takes him down, maybe I'm not that confident in him getting back up, because I would say Alan Nascimento does have some like mass to him, some like size. He is the bigger grappler or fighter. But and Maxim is a little bit like kind of frail, not as the like big or dense as Nascimento, but I do think Raposo could probably do a good job just moving around, defend a takedown, defend like a takedown, and then just beat the shit out of Alan Nascimento on the feet. I'm gonna be genuinely honest. So maybe Alan Nascimento does grapple Raposo to a decision, but for 3 rounds straight, I do think Raposo could win, like steal some rounds based off damage on the feet. And then Nascimento probably holds him down, but it's gonna be a close one. I do think so. It's gonna be a tricky one to if it goes to decision to judge on the scorecards. I can see it happening, but I'm gonna go with Raposo. I do think he's probably gonna edge out a win based off damage rather than control time by Nascimento. So I'm gonna go with Raposo decision win. That's what I'm kind of confident in. So yeah. Next up, at women's bantamweight bout, we got Melissa Croden versus Daria Zhelezniakova. I can't even say that. Kind of sounds like a Harry Potter spell. Daria. I don't want to cringe you guys. Melissa Croden. I just want to say something real quick. I think I said it before in this YouTube channel, but Melissa Croden does look a lot like DDP. If I'm not mistaken. Okay, this is getting awkward. I'm gonna cut that out. But anyways, doesn't it look exactly the same? Like it's just like a face filter for like if you like put like a wig on him and like clean shave. Look, dude, they look exactly the same. I'm not the only one seeing this, right? They're like the exact same person. They look exactly the same. But either way, back to the fight. This one's an okay fight. Croden, I would say she's a pretty good striker on the feet. Really nasty. She has some relatively compared to the rest of the fighters at bantamweight for her division. She has some KO power. Her last fight she lost, but it's because she got out grappled. Daria is not a grappler. She is mainly a striker. And by that simple logic, I'm gonna go with Melissa Croden. Melissa Croden, like I said, is a dangerous striker for her division at WMMA. So I'm gonna go with Melissa Croden. This KO. I'm actually gonna go with a KO. I'm pretty confident in her getting a KO against Daria in the third round. I could see third round. The first round's gonna be kind of like a back and forth. Second round, Croden decisively wins, and then she puts her Daria away in the 3rd round. So that's what I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Mr. Croden winning this fight. I do think she can probably win this one by KO. Next up at heavyweight, we got Tanner Boser versus Gokhan Saricam. We haven't seen Tanner Boser in a couple of years. I think the last time he fought was in 2023. We haven't seen this guy in a long time. The UFC most likely like baited him back to this to the UFC with like some bacon and pancakes or whatever they eat over there in Canada, because we haven't seen this guy in a long time. And obviously they have to fill this card up with Canadian fighters. So, you know, they brought this guy back. Now, funny enough, this Gokhan Sarkia guy, this guy is a Bellator fighter, and he's now making his debut. They've signed this guy for some reason. But the last time this guy fought, let me start with Tanner Boser. Tanner Boser, the last time he fought was in August of 2023, and the last time Gokhan Sarikam fight was in June of 2023. So this guy hasn't even fought. It's like a little bit even longer than Boser. So amazing card we're dealing with. We're dealing with like I don't know what type of decision making the UFC is doing, but here we are. We got two guys who haven't fought in like close to 3 years from now. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. But anyways, we got Tanner Boser, Gokhan Sarikam, and you know, I don't know, he's kind of okay. He looked kind of decent in the Bellator scene. He has some okay wins here and there. That isn't I want to say elite at all. Tanner Boser as well isn't elite, but he's fought some decent guys in the UFC at heavyweight. Doesn't have great wins, but you know, he's still lost to like a couple good guys here and there. His last 2 fights was at light heavyweight, and it was against Ian Cutelaba. He got destroyed by Ian Cutelaba. Then he got a win over someone. I don't know who. I don't remember exactly who he beat. It's probably gonna show up right here. But this was his last win at light heavyweight. Was against Kamur, whoever that is. I don't know. I don't remember, but he's, you know, I don't know. It's gonna be kind of interesting to see how he's gonna look at heavyweight back at heavyweight, because you know, he could kind of say he has developed some light heavyweight skill. I don't know. I'm just making up stuff at this point, but it's gonna be kind of interesting to see how it's gonna look back in the UFC. You see these old school shorts, not old school, but like, what is it, 2023 type of shorts. So it's gonna be interesting to see how he's gonna look back in the octagon against someone who isn't that great. But I ain't gonna lean towards him. He's fought better competition, I guess you can say. He's fought at a slightly higher skilled, well, not slightly, a more higher skilled division. Got a win. I'm gonna lean towards Tanner Boser. I don't really trust Gokhan to even be that good to begin with, so I'm just gonna go Tanner Boser KO. If not decision, it's gonna be a sloppy, run of the mill, 2 fat heavyweights fighting. Well, it's gonna be interesting to see how Tanner Boser is gonna look back, because he, you know, like I said, he did fight at light heavyweight, so maybe he's not gonna be extremely fat coming back at heavyweight. You know, looking like that. Maybe it's gonna be more built, but I don't know. I have no clue. But I'm going with Tanner Boser decision. Now, middleweight bout, we got Julian Leblanc versus Robert Valentin. It sucks seeing Robert Valentin in the UFC being like 0-3 right now. This dude had some hype, had some potential when he was in the Ultimate Fighter. This guy was called the next Yuri. A lot of people were comparing him to Yuri, and you know, he's 0-3 in the UFC, which sucks to see. I mean, I guess the Yuri comparison kind of makes a little bit more sense now, seeing how what Yuri did against Oldberg. That was so dumb by Yuri. Great win for Oldberg. I feel like a lot of people are legit just ignoring Oldberg with his win. Just don't even credit him for getting a win with one leg. They're just, almost, it sounds like everybody's just annoyed at Yuri in that fight. But either way, Robert Valentin, that was actually a winnable fight. I'm gonna be generally honest. Julian LeBlanc, he's Canadian. They signed him just because he's Canadian, and in my opinion, because if you watch his fights, all he really has in the regional scene is body kicks. He has some decent body kicks. Aside from that, his striking, his footwork, his kicking, his grappling is really underdeveloped. It's not that great. He's just not I would say he's not a UFC caliber fighter at all. Valentin has been kind of dirty, and you know, with his matchmaking. You know, he got matched up with Terrence Finney, right? That's his name. That one midget grappler. He just held him up against the cage for 3 rounds straight. And then his last fight was against Atebe Gautier, and Atebe Gautier, even though Atebe Gautier has been just basically can crushing at this point, he's still pretty decent. So yeah, it sucks to see Robert Valentin been done dirty by the UFC, relegated to like a easy layup win for like you can say. I don't know. I do not want to call Terrence Finney a high level fighter, but he is kind of tricky to deal with if you can't defend the takedown. So he's not facing off with this dude who basically just has body kicks of doom. I do lean towards Robert Valentin winning this fight for sure. This is probably going to be his first win in the UFC. I do lean towards him winning this fight, just being the more well-rounded MMA fighter to begin with. So I'm with Robert Valentin KO, if not submission. But I do see him finishing Julian. Julian, like I said, is not that good. And I don't know, like I said, I'm pretty sure they just signed him just because he's Canadian. They want to fill up this card with Canadian fighters. So yeah, but yeah, give me Robert Valentin finish third round, whatever. Now this one right here, first fight of the main card. This one's the most confident pick I can make on this card right here, which is Daniel Buzukja versus Marcel Barbosa at featherweight. This Buzukja, he's decent. I think he's like 1-3 right now in the UFC. Isn't doing that great. He was like, I would say, slightly below average, but he's not that bad. Marcel Barbosa is a monster. He's coming off the Contender Series. And I think I said it before in this YouTube channel. Marcel Barbosa, basically, in my opinion, is like the second coming of Dustin Poirier. He looks exactly like Dustin Poirier when he's striking. His boxing, the way he boxes is very similar. He doesn't do obviously the pull-up shorts thing what Dustin Poirier does, but aside from that, he looks exactly like Dustin Poirier when it comes to like his striking. And he has KO power. He has a bunch of KOs in the regional scene. He's a really good fighter to begin with. He's really dangerous. I see a first round finish for Mario Barbosa. First round KO. Very confident in this guy winning for sure. He's really, really good. And I would even say this guy probably could be like 1 or 2 ranked featherweights right now in the UFC. Like that's how confident I am. How good Mario Barbosa is. Now, is he elite? Like a lock-in to become a champ soon? I don't think so, but he's still really good. Like he's still really good for this level in the UFC. So yeah, I really am confident Mario Barbosa getting a first round KO against Daniel Buzukja. He is really good. So yeah, I'm gonna go first round KO Barbosa, lock of the card in my opinion. Next up at lightweight bout, we got Thiago Moises versus Gage Young. This is a decent matchup. You know, Thiago Moises kind of has fallen quite a bit from grace. He's not as good as he used to be. He's not that old, so he's like, I don't know, like 33 around there. So it's not like he's aged from his prime. I just don't know what's happening to Thiago Moises. Maybe I do think from what I've seen, he kind of has changed his style. He used to just be mainly just a grappler. You know, he just shot takedowns on you, tried to take you down as much as he can. But you know, these last couple recent fights, he's kind of turned into like a striker. You know, he hasn't really been shooting for takedowns that much since compared to his earlier fights. It's kind of interesting to see. His striking is not that bad. He's kind of turned into like a decent technical striker on the feet. Gage Young, he has some decent takedown defense. I could see for sure Gage Young defending the takedowns here and there, especially Moises, someone who kind of turned into a striker for the most part. So it's gonna be kind of interesting to see this matchup for sure. Gage Young, his striking is decent as well. But I do lean towards Thiago Moises, even though Thiago Moises, is coming off a KO loss to Jared Gordon, the worst loss he's suffered so far in his career. He has some good wins, some decent wins here and there. I don't know, like it's gonna be kind of tricky to see what version of Thiago Moises we're gonna be getting, but I do lean towards him winning this fight. I feel like just the simple fact that he can mix in the grappling with the striking and vice versa, striking into the grappling. I do think it's gonna be a little bit too much for Gage Young. Gage Young he's a decent fighter in general. He's well-rounded. He does a lot of good things. But Thiago Moises still has like that it factor when it comes to his grappling and has developed some striking, even though he still hasn't been heavy on the grappling in these last couple fights. I do think he can still do a decent job in this fight and win a decision, if not submit Gage Young in this fight. But I do think he can still win in the grappling and the striking, just like overall win on the scorecards and get himself back into the winning column. So I'm gonna go with Thiago Moises winning against Gage Young. Gage Young is he can still pose a problem in this fight, this matchup. He's still decent. Thiago Moises, hasn't been himself quite lately these last couple fights. But I do lean towards Thiago Moises winning a win against Gage Young in this matchup. So yeah, decision. Diego Moises. Next up at women's flyweight bout, we got Jasmine Judavicius versus Karine Silva. Give me Jasmine Judavicius second round submission. I'm confident in that pick, and I'm that confident, but still. Next up, we got Mandel Nallo versus Jai Herbert at lightweight. Dude, they got I don't know, whatever. Anyways, this is a decent matchup actually. Nallo's obviously is making his debut from the Contender Series. He's a new unlocked character for the Canada cards now. He's his fate is just fighting in these cards from now on. But he's still pretty decent. He's 6 feet tall for lightweight, so he's kind of tall. Kind of he matches up Jai Herbert kind of in frame. But it's Nallo is he's decent. He has some finishing potential. Kind of looks like Michael Morales when he's his posture, his style when he's on the feet looks a lot like him. The way he strikes as well. Like I said, he has some finishing potential, some finishing instincts. I mean, some submissions here and there, some KOs. He's pretty good. Now Jai Herbert, even though he's been losing quite a bit, it's his resumes and the UFC has been like a win lose. He's not been fighting. He's been fighting really hard fighters. Really his most famous loss is the Ilya loss, where he almost finished Ilya with a head kick, and then obviously got chinned later in the second round. But even though in his losses, he still looks pretty good. He looked pretty good against Ilya. He looked pretty good. Actually, not really against Ilya. I mean, except for that one moment, he was getting dominated by Ilya. Except from that, but either way, he looked good against Farziam and these other guys. Farziam is also like 6 feet tall or 6'1" around there. So Jai Herbert has some experience fighting tall, rangy fighters. So Nallo's making his debut. He's pretty good. Jai Herbert, even though he's lost, he looks kind of decent. I wouldn't judge you at all if you picked Nallo to win this fight. Like I said, Jai Herbert, his chin is... I mean, actually, even though he's been chinned like twice, I think. One is Ilya, so you really can't blame him for that one. He doesn't look... you can say he's chinny, but not really. He hasn't really been chinned in his last couple fights at all. He's been going to decision. And, Jai Herbert has some decent wins here and there. You can kind of argue he got robbed against Chris Badilla, which Chris Badilla got robbed against his last fight in 327. Who was his name again? I forgot, but Chris Badilla just got robbed. Borderline. They gave him the win, and then they later changed it to a draw, which is weird, but Jai Herbert had a pretty good fight against Chris Badilla. Chris Badilla's pretty good. Nallo, on the other hand, even though he is, like I said, has finishing potential, he kind of is a bit flat-footed in the regional scene. He was in Bellator, I think. He was fighting in Bellator. The thing about Bellator and like these other promotions outside the UFC, the fighters legit have poor footwork. Their footwork just is not that good. You can see it like in many fighters when they go into the UFC, when they make their debut from like these other promotions. Their first fight in the UFC, their footwork sucks. It sucks so bad. Like legit, their footwork, it looks horrible. And then the second fight into the UFC, you can see a huge improvement in their footwork. It's like a day and night difference you can see in their footwork for these like Bellator fighters coming into the UFC and their first fight to the second fight. It's kind of interesting to notice. I don't think many people have noticed that before, but I do think Nallo's gonna come in this fight with poor footwork. You can see it in his Bellator fights. His footwork is not that good. He kind of easy KO win, if I'm gonna be honest. In his Contender Series fight, it kind of was just given to him by the opponent. His opponent just kind of just like froze in striking range. Nallo just landed. I don't remember. I think he landed like a right hand, but or like something. I don't remember. Like a cross from like either position. And so Jai Herbert is not that. He's actually pretty good. His footwork is pretty nice, very technical. I do lean towards Jai Herbert winning this fight. As long as he doesn't get chinned by Nallo, who has like, KO power, you can say. He could definitely win on the scorecards, and I do see him winning, defending against Nallo's striking and just boom, leg kick, move around, jab, move around, cross, move around. That's how Jai Herbert fights, like a point striker. I do see him winning this fight against Nallo. And I don't think Nallo's going to chin Jai Herbert. I think things going to be a little bit tricky for Nallo to land a KO punch on Herbert. So yeah, I'm going to go with Jai Herbert winning this fight by decision against Nallo. Nallo's good. It's just, I'm with Jai Herbert. Next up, the co-main, we got bantamweight bout. We got Phillips versus Jourdain. This one's This is a good one. I would say it's kind of fairly even, but looking into it, I do lean towards Phillips because both of them have pretty good grappling. You know, Charles Jourdain has his infamous signature guillotine choke. He has like, I don't know, like how many, like 4 or 5 guillotine choke wins in the UFC. But aside from that, I don't really think his grappling, his like overall grappling in terms of like the takedowns, the sprawls, the reversals and such, is like high level. But Phillips has some pretty good grappling of his own, and I do think he could definitely defend the takedowns from Jourdain, because I do see in this fight Jourdain is gonna be the one pushing the pace when it comes to the grappling, you know, shooting the takedowns, trying to get that guillotine choke. But I do see Phillips, you know, doing a pretty good job defending the takedowns and keeping the fight on the feet. Now on the feet, Charles Jourdain, he looks really good on the feet, but Phillips is pretty good on the feet. Now, let me repeat myself. Charles Jourdain looks pretty good, as in visually. He looks, you know, he's quick, fast, but he's not dangerous on the feet. Like, he's not like this, like, he's not like landing consistently, or like he's landing like these like really hard punches or like leg kicks and such. Phillips is a good striker on the feet. Even though he doesn't, you know, he's not elite as well. He still has some pretty good performances on the feet against, you know, other good fighters, and I think he has like a win over Song Yadong and these other guys on the feet. Like I said, Charles Jourdain looks good on the feet. Phillips is good on the feet. I'm gonna go Phillips winning this fight against Jourdain. Jourdain looks tricky. He has some, you know, some crafty like head kicks and such, but he's not like landing like effectively. Phillips is landing effectively, so I'm gonna go Phillips winning this fight, keeping it on the feet, defending the takedowns of Jourdain, and outstriking Jourdain on the feet, you know, landing the more significant strikes, basically. So yeah, I'm going to go with Phillips' decision win. I don't see him chinning Jourdain. I could see this being a little bit tricky to judge based off the fact that Jourdain is kind of like active on the feet as well. But yeah, I'm going to lean towards Phillips landing the harder punches and winning a decision win for the co-main. Now for the main event, the welterweight bout, with this one, Gilberto Quemas versus Mike Malott. This one's... This one's a bit of a sad one, you know. Gilbert Burns, you know, just like Izzy, is on a Anderson Silva, Tony Ferguson run right now, where he's 0-4 right now in his last 4 fights, all, you know, 4 fight losing streak. But anyways, on one hand, in terms of those losses, since the Usman fight, he's only been losing to like really good fighters at welterweight. You know, he lost to Usman, who was champ at the time, and then has like a win over Wonder Boy, and then loses to a Hamza, which is another who is a current champ right now, and then has a win over Neo Magny, and then after that beats George Masvidal. I think that's the order. He beat George Masvidal, and then loses to Belal, who was champ, loses to JDM, who was champ, and then loses to Sean Brady, which Sean Brady beat Leon Edwards, so Sean Brady has a win over a former champ. And then obviously, you know, Michael Morales has a win over Sean Brady, who beat Leon Edwards. So, like I said, Goldburns, on one hand, has been losing to pretty, really dangerous fighters. Let me rephrase that: pretty good fighters, because, you know, Belal and Brady are in the mix, so they're not dangerous. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is Mike Malott, in terms of like the losses, he is the weakest, like, or like the not as dangerous fighter against these other guys, or like high level. Mike Malott, you know, he lost to Neo Magny, who Burns beat Neo Magny. But on the other hand, Gilbert Burns has been doing pretty bad in these fights. He legit got outstruck by Belal. He almost got dropped by Belal. Belal has like 0 knockdowns in the UFC to this day. He has 0 knockdowns. He almost knocked down Burns in that fight in the first round. Burns is lucky he landed on his knee and was able to get back up quickly, because if he didn't, he would be the only fighter in UFC history to get knocked down by Belal ever, which is, it would be super, you know, super depressing for Burns. No, I'm joking. Anyways, he legit got outstruck by by Belal for 5 rounds straight, and then, you know, JDM, he got chinned with a knee. He was doing pretty good in that one. That was a good back and forth. You know, he was controlling JDM pretty nicely for the most part in that fight. And then, you know, he got, you know, held up against the cage for 5 rounds straight against Brady, which is a good game plan for Brady. You know, obviously Brady is a grappler, but Burns has the submission threat, and so obviously keep the fight against the cage, avoid the submission threat, but while also controlling Burns, winning by control time. So it was a smart game plan for Brady in that fight. And then Morales, he just got bodied pretty badly in the first round, got finished. And so it is a decline in visual performance for Burns. He was, goes 5 rounds with like a couple fighters here and there, gets kneed, and then goes 5 rounds with Brady, and then gets destroyed in the first round. So it is like a decline, you can say, like the correlation, when it comes to like each performance, he has been declining. But not just that, but the most importantly, he's been declining also as in age. He's now 39. But the most important one is his chin. His chin legit is almost gone, you could say. He got chinned by Usman. He got wobbled by Hamza. He got dropped by Bilal. And then, he got basically KO'd by a knee and then ground and pound by JDM. Brady just basically held him, and then Morales just finished him in 1 round. Just, destroyed him in 1 round. So Burns' chin has been put through quite a bit of, pressure. And so Mike Malott isn't a KO artist. He's not Morales. I don't see him finishing Burns in the first round. But because it was a 5-rounder, the opportunities for Malott to find the opening and hurt Burns is there. Now Burns does have a pretty good chance to win in this fight against Malott. A really good, strong game plan or like path to victory for Burns in this fight is basically go really hard in the takedowns in the first round, take Malott down quickly, and submit him. I would say that's probably the best way Burns can win this fight for sure against Malott. Malott, he has some really good grappling. He was ragdolling. Even though he lost to Neil Magny, he was ragdolling Neil Magny in that fight. Controlling him here on the grappling. He landed like a couple takedowns, like 3 takedowns on Neil Magny. He was having his way against Neil Magny in that fight up until he got reversed and he was on bottom position, and Neil Magny on top was landing ground and pound and finished Malott, which is not a good visual. But up until that point, he was doing pretty good. That's his only loss in the UFC to begin with, and after that, he's now on a 3-fight winning streak. And his last win was Kevin Holland, which kind of aged decent. It's still not a elite win, but still a decent win to have a win over Holland. And 2020, well, I don't remember what year that was. I think it was last year when Malott beat Kevin Holland. But let's say in the last couple of years, it's a decent win to have a win over Holland. And Mike Malott was landing takedowns on Holland himself. Holland, I don't think he even landed a takedown. I think he went for like a couple takedowns on Malott, and he couldn't get a takedown. And so Malott has some pretty good grappling. It's a little bit different when you're defending a takedown by Burns. Burns has really good takedowns. From what we've seen, he couldn't get started off with the takedowns against Morales. I don't know if it would have been a different fight if he went quickly for the takedowns against Morales before he decided to start striking with Morales, and obviously got finished. And so if Burns goes, like I said, goes balls deep with the takedowns in the first round, just quickly just start shooting like Hamza against Malott, and then takes him down and gets a submission, I could see Burns winning this fight for sure. But down the line, if he doesn't get the takedowns, or he just decides to start striking with Malott, who is a decent kickboxer, Burns really hasn't fought a decent kickboxer since the Usman fight or before that. Usman, he's a grappler. He has some decent boxing. Stephen Thompson is actually, you know what? I don't remember he was grappling Thompson in that fight. I really didn't watch it, I'm gonna be genuinely honest. But that's a decent win. And then he loses to Hamza, who is not a good striker at all, and loses to Hamza. Neil Magny controls him, gets a submission. George Masvidal is not a kickboxer. He is, but it's not like Mike Malott, I would say. Not like he's kind of like a old welterweight, where he's kind of small and such. But he loses to Bilal on the feet. He lost 5 rounds straight to Bilal on the feet. He got out. It was kind of a back and forth against JDM, but he's more basically a kickboxer. And then Morales is basically like a mini Ngannou at welterweight. But Mike Malott is a pretty good kickboxer, a technical kickboxer, and then has power. I wouldn't say obviously nowhere near as close as Morales, and I don't see him finishing Morales in the first round, but if Burns is, this version of Burns who is now 39 and his chin has been compromised pretty badly, and like for like a pretty long while and from now, consistently he's been, his chin has been hurt. Malott could have chin Burns in this fight. He could have not chin him, but like wear him down if he's defending the takedowns, and then just outstriking Burns on the feet. Not outstriking him, but like he can like Burns lands one, Malott eats it, and then Malott lands one, and Burns can't eat it as good as he used to, especially not compared to Malott. So like it can be good back and forth. Burns has some crafty boxing, but I do see Malott just being in his prime, being a quick kickboxer, decent power, will probably break Burns down into the 4th, 5th round. This fight could definitely go to decision. I could see Malott for sure winning a decision, but I can see us definitely start breaking down Burns. This version of Burns, breaking him down into the 4th, into the 5th round. If not get a KO in those rounds, but I'm gonna say decision win for Malott against Burns. Burns, I would say he could probably do a decent job not getting chinned in this fight. Not doing, have a good performance. Even though he's gonna probably lose this fight, still have a good performance unlike his last couple fights. And also because I said, Malott could definitely, the thing about Malott is he has shown to adapt in his fights, change it up a bit. He showed it in his Kevin Holland fight. He's adapted here and there and changed it up here. Burns doesn't really show to adapt in his fights or mix it up or anything like that. We've seen him in the last 2 5-rounders. He doesn't adapt at all. He legit just get outstruck in the first round against against Bilal, and then for the next 4 rounds he doesn't change it up. He just gets simply outstruck against Bilal. Brady, he doesn't change it up. He loses to the first round against Brady, gets out grappled, pushed up against the cage, and he doesn't change anything up. He just gets out grappled and pushed up against the cage for the next 4 rounds. So Burns, from what I've seen, he doesn't really change it up, doesn't really adapt, doesn't really change the game plan against when he's losing. So if Malott is defending the takedowns, he can for sure beat up Burns into a 4th, 5th round stoppage, if not decision, win on the scorecards. And the thing is also Malott, since then Neil Magny loss, I could definitely see him improving his grappling to begin with, his reversals, his takedown defense, just his sprawls, you not try to be on bottom and get ground and pound. I could definitely see him being much more improved in this fight. And this version of Burns, I don't see him, I can see him definitely keeping the feet up against the cage or on the feet in general against this version of Burns. Older version of Burns, I would most likely go with him winning this fight. But simply just because Burns is just up there in age, 39, and his chin has been compromised, I really do lean towards Mike Malott in this fight. This fight kind of gives me Izzy Pyfer vibes to begin with. Izzy should have won, but he didn't. He made some mistakes here and there and got finished. I'm going with Mike Malott winning this fight. I do, this is his time to shine. He's only lost to once against Neil Magny, and you can say improved since then. I'm going with Mike Malott. I do think he wins against Burns. Pretty obviously. This is kind of the obvious answer to begin with, but Burns still has like a path to victory, like I said. But I'm gonna lean towards Mike Malott win this fight. I said it like 5 times already. I'm gonna go with Mike Malott decision win against Gilberto Quemas for the main event of this card in Canada. Oh, Canada. But anyways, those are all my picks. And if you think differently, let me know down in the comment section below. I like to read your comments. And if you come this far, like and subscribe. And thank you guys for watching. And goodbye.